Welcome to Walk Away Wealthy. I'm your host, Alan Terrell Gregory. If you're thinking of selling your existing business or looking to untangle yourself from your old business so you can start a new one, you came to the right place. Today, I have a very special guest, Chris Alman. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Doing well, Alan. Hey, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am in an interesting space. I feel like it's the financial planning and exit planning space, and really fell into that kind of over the last few years, just after having worked with so many business owners and things that just found a passion for something that there doesn't seem to be a big amount of people out there serving business owners in this regard. So got an interesting history. I started off flipping houses right out of college and worked with investors on that front. And then, really just kind of learned that it's fun to make money, but it's not very fulfilling. Right. And so I had that desire to really want to help people and just, realize that, finances are one of those things that cause a lot of issues. And so I moved into the CFP world and got that designation. And here I am today.
So how long ago did you get your CFP? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it was in 2011 or 2012. I can't remember exactly, but yeah. So after flipping houses, I really just needed something better, right? More fulfilling. And I ended up working for a guy that was a fee-only financial planner, just meaning, he doesn't sell any products, doesn't sell insurance or anything like that. So it's really just advice-based. And I feel like I was very fortunate in that regard because it really shaped kind of the way that I do business today. And so after working with him for a little bit, he said, "Hey, why don't you get your CFP?" So I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." I was really starting to enjoy it and just pursued it, right off the bat. And I'm really glad that I did. It's really helped me a lot over the years.
So how does your CFP translate into helping business owners specifically with retirement or exiting their businesses?
Yeah. So, when most business owners would go into a financial advisor's office, they typically end up seeing, someone that asks them, like, how much do you have to invest? Right. And I don't know, because I was that guy. Like, I worked for, a firm that managed assets, and that was a big part of the retirement planning that most advisors do. And it's more focused on that or on, an investment product like an annuity or life insurance or whatever it may be. And just over the years, having those conversations with owners and realizing, they don't have a lot of wealth outside of their business. And it's challenging for them to get the advice that they are looking for because nobody really wants to work with them because they don't have money to manage. And that's how the industry's been built. And so after, being in that environment for so long, that was something I started to notice and decided, hey, I want to do something different and really just focus on meeting their needs where they are and being a part of the journey rather than trying to come in at the end to capture assets and manage those.
Got it. So if business owners don't have a lot of assets to begin with, how exactly do you help them?
Yeah. So typically it's all about getting owners prepared, right? At some point they're going to have an exit. And when I say an exit, it doesn't mean that you're selling your business. A lot of business owners have no desire to sell their business. And I totally get that, right? Because that's where they get their batteries recharged. It's where they come in every day looking forward to being there. They enjoy working with their customers and their employees. And it just, that's what fills them up. And that's perfectly fine. I tell people, like, that is an exit. Whenever you get to the point and you die on the battlefield, as I like to say, it's kind of that story. It's like, I'm going to go out there and give it everything every day. And eventually I'll just die, doing what I love. And that's really okay. But you don't want to leave it for your family to clean up. Right. So there's all sorts of different exits. And I just want to get owners in that position where they feel comfortable knowing, hey, at some point I am going to exit, whether it's forced on me or I decide that, hey, I'm starting to find other passions or other business ventures that I want to pursue. And so, just help them get to that point where they're comfortable where they are and knowing where they're going. Right. So it's just, it's kind of like coaching in a sense, right? Like a in a lot of different ways, but I would say one of the biggest things is getting people prepared mentally and financially so that they can move into that next place in life.
So assuming an owner doesn't want to die on the battlefield, what are some of their other like options in terms of it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of guys that I've talked with over the years that just want to get back to the creative side, or they want to get back to the sales side, or whatever it may be. There's, that part of them that they got into business because they love this thing, right? And they didn't realize once they got there that, hey, I'm also the janitor, I'm the bookkeeper, I'm, everything rolled into one. And they just want to kind of get back to doing what they love. So one of the exits that I'll talk about with owners is, exiting the role, right? You don't have to be the person in charge of everything and trying to oversee everything. You can still even be the owner, but hire other people to come in and run the operations and the things that you might not enjoy as much, so that you have a better sense of fulfillment and you get to keep doing what you love. And then when you talk with your employees too, it's letting them know that, hey, now there's more continuity, because this business doesn't just rely on me. We have people that can run it together. So yeah, that's one of the things I like to talk about a lot, because a lot of people don't really think about it that way.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because when you think about, potentially selling a business to somebody that may want to buy like a third party sale kind of thing, they don't necessarily want to buy a job. So reducing owner dependence is going to be one of the top things that you want to do if you're thinking about any sort of exiting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Get yourself out of that role and just enable your team to lead the charge. Get other people in the right seats on the bus so that everybody can do what they need to and get you where you want to go.
So how would you address an owner that says, I'm thinking about hiring people, but I'm so used to doing everything myself, I don't know if I want to? What would be your response?
I think we're all guilty of that. There's so many different things that we all try to do. And at the end of the day, you realize that you can't do everything well, not at the same time. You can do a lot of different things well if you put all of your efforts and your energy into that thing. But, just like when you file your taxes, most business owners came to the conclusion they should not file their own taxes. They need to hire a CPA to do it, because there's just so much to know, right? There's so many different things that they don't know. And if you mess up, it can cost a lot of money, especially in taxes. So in that same way, when it comes to hiring, an employee or whatever it may be, just realize like it's okay to put someone else in a position that maybe they either understand the things that are happening better than you, or maybe it's just something that you don't enjoy doing as much. So let them take that on, take that responsibility off of you. Doesn't mean that you lose the control over what's happening. It just means now they can report it to you in a way that's more meaningful. So as you're considering hiring new people or getting help in other areas, kind of like what I do, it's the same thing, right? And you just realize I can't manage all of the finances and I can't manage all the other things on my own. I'll be better off if I hire someone to help me with it and, just go with it.
So what are some of the tools that business owners can use to protect themselves as they're going through something like this?
Yeah. So, when you think about protecting your business, there's a couple different ways that, you can look at it, right? There's having people obviously in place is one aspect of that, having a team that can run the business without you, right? That helps tremendously in terms of protecting your business, because you're taking yourself out of the equation. So if something happens to you, you become disabled for a little while or something like that, get cancer, that happens all the time. Your business can keep running. So having people in place is instrumental, but also on a bigger picture, you also have, insurance products like for disability and life insurance and things like that. And a lot of people don't realize that with disability insurance, it's not just for your employees, although that helps, that gives them a benefit. But you as the owner, a lot of times I've talked with, startup owners, maybe they're not ready to exit right away, but they're thinking about it from the start. One of the things I tell them as you're getting going, that's really important for you to have that disability insurance, because a lot of them are just a few months away from going bankrupt if something happens to them. Like what happens to their business? It just goes down the drain. So having something that can pay you if you're sick might just be what keeps your business, viable for another few months or a year or however long it might be until you can kind of get back to it and get it going again. And and the same thing is true on the kind of the more morbid side. If you pass away, your business, if it relies on you, it's pretty much dead. And that's a hard reality. It's the harsh truth, but it's very, it's just honest. Because if you're the guy that's doing everything and no one else knows how to do what you do, then there's nowhere for it to go, right? So building people up, putting people in place, and then having kind of that clear directions that you can leave behind, whether that's through your will or buy-sell agreements and things like that. Just having those types of instruments in place just help that transition.
So could you talk a little bit more about buy-sell agreements? A lot of owners hear about that, but they're not sure what they are.
Yeah. So I don't write them, but I do see them quite often. And essentially a buy-sell agreement it's a legal document between partners or owners that are, co-owners in a business that, says how the business will be valued if something happens to one of the owners. That's kind of the first part of it. So if one of the owners dies and now there's that buy-sell agreement in place, it's going to tell the owner that survived, how much they're going to have to pay that other owner who's, his shares probably went to, a spouse or something like that. Or the agreement may say that, it doesn't go to the spouse. It goes back to the business. The business is going to buy those shares from him. But essentially, it gives you that outline of what happens. It tells you the value of the business, how it'll be calculated, and it tells the surviving owners how to make that happen. And a lot of times they're not funded, right? You get into those conversations early on as partners in a business, and you put an agreement in place that says, hey, if something happens to me, here's how we can value it. It's like, that sounds great. And you move on and you don't think about updating that or, determining, hey, does the way that we're deciding the value of the business, does it really work? Is it viable? And then, how do you fund it? And sometimes it might be through cash flows, but most often you see it through life insurance.
So is it kind of like a will for the business?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. The will is going to transfer a lot of your personal assets and things like that, and it will transfer your ownership shares to your estate or to, your spouse or whoever it may be. But that buy-sell agreement will ultimately decide what happens with the business.
So you made a video recently on LinkedIn that I was just scrolling and I saw it talked about wills, power of attorney, trusts, and I believe it was advanced healthcare directives. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So those are kind of the four main documents that I think every single business owner and just individual needs to have in their life. So, the will essentially is the document that says what happens to your assets when you're gone, right? So what happens to your house, your cars, anything that's valuable. It's a way for you to determine who gets it, right? So it also will, if you have minor children, it's really important because it allows you to name a guardian for your children, which that's a really hard conversation to have. I get it. I have young children right now, but it's so crucial to make sure that they end up with the people that you feel like will care for them best, right? So that happens inside of your will. The power of attorney is not about, what happens when you're gone. It's about, who can act on your behalf right now. So there's a durable power of attorney, which just says, I'm going to give someone permission to act on my behalf in whatever regard it might be. There's different types. It might be in financial cases where, you need them to sign, a sales document, or, they're able to transfer money on your behalf or just get your financial information, right? Just signing things around the financial matters. Then you have, healthcare information. So you have, healthcare powers of attorneys that just says, someone else can sign off and get information about your healthcare. So that's the power of attorney. And you can put it in place so that they can either make actions while you're alive and while you're healthy and perfect state of mind. A good way to look at it, if if you've ever talked with like a bill, a company about your bill, and they're like, you try to call for your spouse to talk with, that provider about your spouse's bill, they won't talk to you, right? Well, if you have a power of attorney, they will talk to you. You'll have to send it to them, of course. They'll have to actually see it and verify it, but that will give them permission to talk to you on the behalf of someone else, right? And then as far as, trusts are they're kind of like a will in a sense. They do a lot of the same things in terms of distributing assets and things like that. But you can also put a lot of other protections in place and be able to disperse your assets, after you're gone, and put a lot more limitations on it, right? So who can do what? When can they do it? What authority do they have? And then even, if they do something that you don't agree with, if it's in that trust document and they go against it, other family members or whoever else is a beneficiary of that trust has the authority then to take that to court and get it fixed. So a lot of stipulations. Some people like it, some don't. But it does avoid the probate process, which a lot of people find scary, which is, at the end of the day, it just offers privacy and protection for a lot of your assets. And then the last one, advanced healthcare directives. It's really just who gets to make medical decisions for you if you can't, right? So if you've ever been to the hospital and you're going to have a surgery, they're going to ask you, do you have an advanced directive? And, a lot of us have said no at some point in time. And, it's kind of one of those things you don't really think about, it'll be fine, until you need it, right? Until you need someone else to make a decision because you're, either unconscious or whatever it may be.
So these are like the foundational things that you have to put in place when you begin an exit plan?
They're really good to have. I wouldn't say that you have to, but it's a great starting point, right? Because it just, you're taking some of the uncertainty out of the exit. And I'll tell you, a lot of owners don't think about it like this, but if you think about it from a buyer's perspective, if they're going to go into that process, that due diligence process, and collecting information about your business and trying to decide whether they want to buy it from you, they're putting a lot of money into that, doing their due diligence. And for them to know that you have structures in place that will, take care of the business if something happens to you, that is instrumental, because it makes sure that your business continues even if something happens to you long enough for them to potentially complete that transaction.
So as a certified financial planner, do you participate in the due diligence process?
Not a whole lot. I do provide certain information, but I'm not really on the business side as much as I am on the personal and the financial side. Yeah, because there's guys like you that, you probably see it every day. You see a lot of what they're looking for and what they're looking at. From my perspective, I want to focus primarily on the personal aspects of things and then the financial readiness, right? So I want them to feel that stability in their minds that, hey, whatever happens, I've got a plan in place and I know what I want. I know what I want the future to look like. And then knowing how much that money they need, right? So they can say like, yeah, if it's $10 million, if it's $5 million, whatever it might be, they know that. And then that's what they then come to the table when they start doing the deals and the negotiations. They know how much they need, right? That's so important, because how do you know if you have a good offer on the table if you don't know what you need, right? It's like, hey, here's $10 million, but if you needed 15, you're in a world of hurt. So
another question here is, how do you determine owner readiness for exit?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is just the mental aspect of it. I would, I keep saying that, I feel like, but, one of the number one reasons why most deals fall apart is because the owner's just not ready, right? They believe that they're ready in some cases, and, they're always focused on their business and getting it ready. And, maybe they're working with a coach or a consultant and they've really been growing their business and doing all the right things, right? Just, being a SEPA, that value acceleration methodology, going through and just enhancing the value. Well, that's great. But if you don't focus too on what you're going to do after you get through that process, you're going to get to that closing table. You're going to start to look for any little details that you can to essentially sabotage, what you're doing. And I'm actually putting out a video this week about that. So that'll be tomorrow, just for a little plug.
Okay.
But really, that is kind of what causes that problem there at the closing table. So I think just being ready personally and financially helps tremendously as far as being ready to exit. Obviously, you have to have the business in order as well, but I think that personal side is just so instrumental.
Yeah, because a lot of people, business owners in particular, obviously have their identity wrapped up inside the business, right? So when they exit the business, they're almost exiting a part of themselves. So there's a lot to deal with there on the mental and emotional side.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Too much sometimes.
Way too much. So here's a question here too. How much time is needed to plan and execute a successful exit for a business?
Yeah, that's a great question. The industry typically would say, that at a minimum, you need a year for an exit. I don't know that I agree with that. Yeah, I think you might need a year to close a deal, but it may not be a deal that you want. It's kind of like you can exit, but you might have to sell it for a lot less than what you want. You may have to settle for some poor terms or whatever, because it's just not allowing enough time for you to really have your business in great shape. And maybe it is in great shape, but you're not, right? Like we were saying, you don't, your business might be ready, but you're not ready. And sometimes it takes a little while for you to get into that mindset. So I would say, honestly, 3 years probably, I think, is enough time, because it allows you enough time to let your business kind of go through that process where, for you mentally, getting it ready, going through the act of like, okay, I'm going to be leaving, but then it also gives you time to think about it personally, like, okay, what do I want to do, and how am I going to spend my time, and really just diving into that a little bit, check things out, see how it's going. So I'd say about 3 years.
Yeah, so one of the things that I find that owners usually want to do when they exit their business and they don't plan to jump into another one is to be on some sort of board of advisors or chamber of commerce or something like that, where they can still flex their business muscles and feel like they're part of a business. That tends to work really well.
Absolutely. It's about that finding fulfillment, right? And if you are really good at your business and you love what you do, then, it might be that you can help other businesses do that, but not be committed to having to do it every day. Yeah, just be able to impart that wisdom that you've learned over the years to someone else and help them grow, but not have to be a part of all the headaches that come along with it sometimes.
Agreed. What's the difference between your services and that of a business broker?
Yeah, so the way I look at it, I work with a lot of business brokers on the actual sale. And I think from a business broker perspective, their number one goal is to help you make a market, right? Find buyers to get your business sold. Where I come into play is I want to help you get it to the point where it's ready to sell, right? So I'm not going to be the guy that goes into the business and helps fix those things. That's what a lot of great, value do. And, and I work hand in hand with a lot of them, let them work on the business aspects and getting it ready. And then for me, it's getting them ready personally and financially, so that once the time comes to bring the broker or the M&A advisor into the picture, their business is really kind of in that top shape, ready to go. So it's going to make finding buyers much easier.
So would you say it's better for owners to begin working with you before securing the services of a business broker?
I think so. I mean, I've done it both ways, where, they went to the business broker, they talked with them, kind of felt out the market, if you will, to see kind of what they might be able to sell their business for. And I think that's perfectly fine. That's one of the things that I do recommend as I usually get started with them is, let's reach out to either a broker or an M&A advisor and let them kind of give us an idea of what your business is worth in the state that it's in right now. That's just a great starting point. Doesn't have to be an official valuation, but just, ballparking it so that you know kind of where you're at. So I've had some that have done that first, and then they reach out to me because, usually it's the broker or the M&A advisor that tells them, hey, you really need to work with somebody, to kind of get things where where you want it to be. So generally, yeah, I think it's better to work with me on the front end so that you're ready to go, because I'll help you address a lot of the things that they're going to ask, in that first meeting.
And that leads right into this question. So what does working with you actually look like? If someone comes to you today, what does it look like to work?
Yeah, so it's really kind of a 3-step process. I mean, the first step is just identifying where you're at, building out a baseline of your personal aspirations, kind of where you want to be. And, a lot of times when you think about planning, financial planning, you think about like all these future goals, and it feels kind of, funny thinking about it that, they're all kind of hypothetical, right? Business owners typically work in the concrete and like what's happening right now. So it's hard to think about the future, but that's exactly what we want to do. Is in that first kind of stage is really just think about, where you want to be, how you want it to look. And then we look at your finances and see where you're at financially. The next step is to then translate, what you want to do and how much it costs kind of into that same picture, so that now you have a clear understanding of, what it takes to get where you want to be. So that's kind of that second process. And then from there, it's mapping out strategies to get you there. Right. So those are the kind of 3 stages: identify where you're at, put together that plan, and then just executing on those strategies. So a lot of what I do, it's not long-term planning. Sometimes it's in the now, like tax planning and things like that. There's so many strategies you can take advantage of today that'll put you in a better position and help you get where you want to be faster. So it's not always just about the future. It's about, in a lot of ways, creating that lens that you can look through, so you can see, all right, if I want to be way out here, whatever that looks like, are these decisions that I'm making today going to put me closer to that or further away?
And because you help people with tax planning, I'd like to talk about that too. So what role does tax planning play in, what you do?
Yeah, it's actually, probably one of my biggest value adds, right? So just sometimes it's small things. It's finding, ways to mitigate your taxes now, whether that's through retirement plans or, saving strategies, whether it's looking towards other professionals, because a lot of times, you think about your CPA. The CPAs do a wonderful job at filing, but most people aren't paying them to do tax planning, right? The extent of the planning is like, hey, you should buy some more equipment, because it's a write-off. I don't see it that way. I think if you're buying equipment, it's still an expense and one that maybe you don't need. So there's other professionals that I'll rely heavily on in terms of, looking at like cost segregation strategies and things like that. But there's so many little things that you can do just to save money in taxes now that, it really helps to do that planning every single year. Right. And then also when it comes to selling your business, there's some huge opportunities there, because how you structure your deal, where you want your assets to go after that deal like closes, there's so many ways to structure it that will, absolutely change how much taxes you pay. Things like 1031 exchange on the real estate part of it. You have deferred sales trusts, which help you defer those capital gains from the start, and take it out over time, kind of like an installment sale, except you don't actually carry the note. It's not seller finance like most installment sales are, using charitable trusts and things like that. That's kind of getting down into the weeds a little bit, but there's just so many opportunities that as you're getting through that process, getting ready today for what comes tomorrow, that tax planning is huge.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked that, because there are some significant tax implications when you sell your business, like the capital gains of, 40% or something like that? Like you can get $1 million and end up only getting 600,000 if you don't structure it properly. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. Looking at it, in California, I think is one of the highest. If you're looking at it from a federal perspective, you pay 20% is kind of the maximum, plus a 3.8% Medicare, additional tax on that. So you're at 23.8, and then I think California's state capital gains tax is like 13.3. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to go look it up, but I was just working with somebody the other day, and I'm pretty sure that's what I looked at. So yeah, I mean, you're up there at 35, 36%.
All right, so we're wrapping up here. I just got a few more questions for you. So what characteristics do your best clients exhibit?
Yeah, so typically the owners that I've worked with are very smart. They're driven. They want to have a better future, right? They could probably do what I do if they wanted to spend enough time to do it. And that's where they realize I'm not the guy that's going to be best in this role, and I need someone else to help me manage that. So it's part of being a business owner is deciding what roles other people should fill. That's the same way when it comes to working with me. The clients that I work with are very much delegators. They understand that value that they're getting. Typically, in terms of size of the business, it doesn't matter so much, but I've found that once revenues are around that 1 to 2 million mark is when most business owners feel more comfortable paying the cost and understanding that they're going to get the value back. Because a lot of what I do, it's advice based, right? So there's no product. It's all about building that relationship, walking with them, presenting them the facts, and letting them make the decision at the end.
So what's your best advice for someone looking to sell their business or transition to a new one?
I'd say, number one, ask yourself why. Like, why are you selling your business? Because if it's driven by someone else's desires for you, you're going to be miserable, right? You're going to regret ever even thinking about selling your business. But if it is because, that's what you feel is best, then the next step is to ask, when, how soon does it need to happen? Do you want it to happen right now? Because like I said, if you really want it to go smoothly, you need to be thinking a few years out. So those are kind of the two main things that I would ask is why and when.
What's one of your favorite quotes and why?
I love that. I'd say it's a quote from Michael Gerber, and I think it was in the E-Myth that he wrote it. But he said, if your business relies on you, you don't own a business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you work for a lunatic. I just think it's so true. And it's one of those things that unfortunately I see way too often. The owner has a job because they're afraid to delegate things out. They're afraid that they're going to lose that control and that sense of fulfillment, when in reality, if they would just do that, start bringing people in, their business will grow, and then they can get back to doing the things that they love.
So how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn pretty regularly. You can find me there. I'll make sure you have the link for that. You can check out my website. It's, equipfp.com, or feel free to give me a call. My number's 251-373-8363. I'm pretty open. Unfortunately, I'll answer the phone. A lot of times it's the telemarketers, but I try to give everybody that time because, you never know when that conversation just might be what you need.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
Hey man, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.